Hello there, thrill seekers. I have searched the internet over, well, not really anyway, but I think I have found the worst Zen Buddhist in America. Perhaps the worst Zen Buddhist in the world. Like, this makes me ashamed to call myself a practitioner of Soto Zen Buddhism. So let's take a look at the video that sort of convinced me of this. Let's look at it together.
Should you cut off contact with family members just because they are voting for Donald Trump? Yes. If so far they have not been able or willing to listen to compassion, to listen to kindness, to listen to you, or even to do their own research and discover that hatred's not the answer, that love and kindness is the answer. If they are unwilling to change, they must experience consequences. And you should not withhold those consequences from them. The consequence in this case would be they don't get your beautiful, loving, wonderful presence in their lives. It's over. And they are gone.
Well, I'm not so sure I'd want to have that particularly loving, wonderful presence in my life. But there you go. Maybe you want it in yours. But it's such bad advice. That is such incredibly bad advice, and I don't even know where to begin. But let me show you why I even was concerned about this. Because if this was just if this video had just appeared on the internet with no connection to Zen Buddhism, I wouldn't even bother commenting on it, because it's typical of the stupid garbage stuff that's been circulating on the internet for Jesus, how long is it? Since 2016, I guess, probably even before that. But let's look at this guy's bio. His name is Jeffrey Marsh, and in one of the bios, he says, Jeffrey lived as a Zen monk and has studied Zen Buddhism for over 20 years. Oh my God. And then this other one identifies him, or he identifies himself as, it says, Jeffrey is a precepted facilitator in the Soto Zen tradition of Buddhism. Yeah, I agree. I don't know what that is either. So Ziggy is asking, as you might be asking, what is a precepted facilitator in the Soto tradition of Zen Buddhism, or the Soto Zen tradition of Buddhism? I have no idea. I have never heard of that designation before. It's maybe one of these sort of new designations that have come up since Buddhism has been a thing in America. A precepted probably means he took the precepts. The Buddhist precepts are, anybody can take the Buddhist precepts. So I've talked about them a bunch of times on this channel, and you can go look at my other videos about the Buddhist precepts. But sorry, there's Ziggy. The basic idea of taking Jukai, which is taking the precepts, is anybody can do it. Sometimes there's a bit of a sort of classes you might be asked to take before you do it. My teacher didn't even require that. He just, if you said, hey, I want to take the precepts, he'd schedule a time and then you'd take the precepts. So it doesn't really mean that much. You could walk in off the street on day one in most places that do Zen Buddhism and ask for the precepts, and they give it to you without asking too much, or your background, or what you wanted to do with them. A precepted facilitator, I have no idea. Maybe he is now giving talks at some Zen temple. God, I hope not. I really hope not. But I had been actually wanting to do a video about this idea of going no contact anyway. So let's maybe break that down. Well, number one, there might be reasons I could think of why somebody would want to go no contact with their family members. I'm going to leave that for another minute, and then just say that because they're voting for Donald Trump is not one of them. I'm sorry, no, there's no possibility that that one thing only would be reason enough to go no contact with a family member. It's just stupid. It's just politics. It's not going to make much difference anyway. But I know there's people who think it would make a big difference, but not going to make a difference. He says that if your family member has refused to listen to compassion and reason and do their own research, what kind of compassion is that? I have no idea. But it just isn't reason enough. If I can imagine a situation that was extraordinarily severe, where somebody just had to just go no contact with a family member. I kind of went no contact with my dad at one point, but I didn't really. I didn't go no contact with him. I just had a big blowout with him in which I decided it would be best for me not to talk to him for a while. And that lasted, a few months, and then I tried to get back into contact with him, and it was difficult because he was married to somebody who didn't want him to contact me, which was what the problem was to begin with. So that was difficult, but we eventually more or less resolved things by the time he died. Although I only saw him a couple of times after that. I mean, after we had the big blowout, I maybe saw him 2 or 3 times. And it was sad. The thing is about going no contact with your family member is... Now, see, this is going to get into a little bit of Buddhist cosmology. I don't know if cosmology is the right word, but basically the philosophy that Buddhists have about why you are connected with your family members in the first place. Now, if you want to go there are certain texts, including Dogen kind of gives his endorsement to this idea, although he doesn't state it directly. He talks about when you are before your birth in the human world, and I'm saying you can take this with a grain of salt, but let's just keep going. Before your birth into the human world, you are existing in a world called I wish I could think of the name in Sanskrit, because that would be really impressive, but I can't. It translates to the womb storehouse world. And storehouse, it gives that translation is pretty lousy, but the idea is that when you are about to be born, you go into this kind of other realm, which is going to commit you into the womb of your mother in the next life, in the human world, if you are to be born in the human world. And drawing close to a mother or father is as elaborate as Dogen gets to it. But if you look at the texts that he's probably referring to, the idea is that one has a karmic affinity with one's family. So you can feel at odds with your family. I certainly did in the instance that I mentioned to you, and in my younger years I had quite a disconnect from my family. I didn't understand my parents. I didn't really understand even my sister very well, and I felt very alienated from them, so I understand how that can feel. I wasn't abused or didn't have any of that kind of stuff, so that's what I was talking about when I said there may be reasons to go no contact. But the thing is, you never really go no contact. Like, if you refuse to speak to your family member for years and years, and until they're dead and gone, or until you're dead and gone, because who knows who goes first, you might think you've established no contact, but you haven't established no contact if you're kind of looking at things from the Buddhist perspective. There is always contact because there is always a deep karmic connection between yourself and your family. I am reluctant to go into the sort of explanations that some Buddhists go into, like the ones I just mentioned, this idea that you're actually... it makes it sound almost like you have a choice in the matter. Like, oh, let's look for the couple who I have the most karmic affinity. Oh, there they are. Boom, I'm going to go get born there. Or this metaphysical stuff about your where you are before you're born in the womb storehouse world and all that. So I take that with a grain of salt, and I understand if people don't believe that. But even if you don't believe that, you are flesh of their flesh, blood of their blood. So when you talk about karma, that doesn't just mean this kind of esoteric, weird, spooky stuff. It means your actual physical being. I know my physical being is very much connected with my dad, because some of you, there's people who complain about my singing voice, and I was talking about that in the last video. When I hear my singing voice, I hear my dad's singing voice. I sound just like him. I have a very almost identical voice to my dad. And my dad was not a good singer, and neither am I. So I can feel the karmic affinity. I have my mom's nose. If you ever saw my mom, she's gone now, a long time ago. And my dad's voice and a lot of my dad's physical features, except I didn't get the curly hair. But, I kind of used to wish I'd gotten the curly hair from him, but I never did. I got the straight hair. But anyway, probably from my mom. But anyway, you have that karmic deep affinity, and whether you want to put that in kind of metaphysical, esoteric sort of terms like some Buddhists do, or whether you just see that in terms of same flesh, same blood, same sort of genetic makeup, you're always very close. Same kind of place. The place where you were born is the place where your parents lived when you were born. That has a lot to do with it, and there's a lot of contact in there. This idea of going no contact has gotten kind of trendy these days, and it's very worrying to me, because there's people like this idiot, and I will call him an idiot because he's an idiot and the worst Soto Zen practitioner in the country, if not the world. People like this idiot who are going on the internet, on TikTok in particular, which I've never looked at TikTok. I've looked at TikTok videos reproduced elsewhere, which is how I found this one. But I've never looked at the damn app or whatever the hell it is myself. Don't have no intention of looking at it. There's a lot of people on there giving this advice to young people, like go no contact, and with the flimsiest of reasons. The flimsiest of reasons in this case being they voted for Donald Trump. Like, what kind of reason is that? That's garbage reason. But, any reason. And this, one of the reasons I talk about this idiot, this asshole who did this video as the worst Buddhist in America, because he's definitely a terrible, terrible person. Giving that advice is because that's the kind of advice a cult leader gives. And so it's especially dangerous in the hands of somebody who's a precepted facilitator, whatever the hell that means, of a religion, especially the one that I'm part of. I'm so sad to be part of it anymore. But it because it encourages that kind of cult thing. And this bio says that he lived as a Zen monk. I almost said I'd like to know where. Actually, I hope nobody tells me where this guy was a Zen monk, because I kind of don't want to know. Especially if it's somebody I know is endorsing this waste of humanity. But it's the kind of thing a cult leader does. And so in the context of Zen Buddhism, in the context of being a monk, that's an easy sort of go no contact kind of thing. Because one of the ideas of becoming a monk is to leave home and family. Shukkei is what the monk ordination ceremony is called in Japanese, and it literally means leave home. Now the thing is, in the old days, home leaving, you have to remember that when this developed in the early days, it wasn't really possible for people to go very far from their homes. I guess some people did, but you'd have to be like Vasco da Gama or something. I'm trying to think of a famous explorer. Actually, I think today is Columbus Day, or used to be Columbus Day. So you'd have to be Christopher Columbus or somebody like that. Somebody Marco Polo. There were people who ventured very far off, but the ordinary person didn't get very far. So I always imagined these monks who left home were probably in contact with their families anyway. Their families are probably supporting them. That's often what happens in Japan. The family often supports somebody who goes off to shukai, to leave home. So it doesn't, in the modern day, when you hear something like leaving home, it has a different feeling, because especially we as Americans are especially, you know, that's sort of our thing. I moved out of my parents' house when I was 18. Then I moved to Japan, and I found out people moving out of their parents' house when they were 18 is almost unheard of in Japan. People usually stay a lot longer. I remember there was a show called Get a Life, and it was about a guy who was 30 years old who was living with his parents. And I was trying to talk to one of my Japanese friends about this show because I thought it was kind of funny at the time. And as I was explaining the premise, I realized, oh, that doesn't sound, a person who's 30 years old living with their parents in Japan, that doesn't even sound weird. So it's kind of an especially American thing to do. But I did it, and I got far away. Actually, my parents moved to Texas, so I was already at Kent State University, and they moved to Texas when I was at Kent State. So I left home, and then my home left me and moved. You know, I don't know how far away Dallas, Texas is from Kent, Ohio, but it's a long way. So I had this big distance, and I often regret it. My wife, her family is Mexican, and they are very tight with each other. So every single Sunday, I go out to what we would call, you know, what we white folks in America would probably call a family reunion, and have it once every 10 years. Well, they have it every week, and the family all gets together and has dinner and whatever. And this goes for even times when people are pissed at each other, you know, off, as you know, it happens. I don't want to air weird things about my particular in-laws, but it happens with every family. And so they'll still have the get-together, and that helps resolve a lot of the things, and a lot of really minor things. And somebody voting for the candidate you don't like is a minor thing. And I happen to know, actually, within this family, some of the family are not voting for the same candidate. We just don't talk about it. So it's not a good thing to do, and it really disgusts me, deeply disgusts me, to see somebody who is presenting himself as a representative of the Soto Zen tradition spreading this kind of garbage. So yeah, going no contact, as I said, in a really desperate situation, I can see why somebody would do that. I've had friends, people I know, whose family situations were so deeply toxic that they had to just go no contact, and I get it. But unless you're in that situation, my advice would be try to figure out how to make it work, because you have a deep karmic affinity. Even in a really toxic situation, it's probably worthwhile to at least make some effort to try to figure out how it works. But I don't want to give, you know, advice that's going to get anybody into physical danger or anything like that. So I do understand that there are very desperate situations. But again, because of the person's voting, that is not a reason. So Jeffrey, you're wrong, and Jeffrey, you are a very bad representation, possibly the worst I have ever seen, of Soto Zen Buddhism, and this finger is for you. All right, if you want to donate to me saying more bad things about people I see on the internet, which I'm really going to try not to do, but this one got me mad, so I probably won't be doing that. You can go to the URL that you're seeing on the screen below, which is hardcorezen.info/donate. That is hardcorezen.info/donate. There's where you will find my PayPal and Patreon links, and those are my main way of making a living, and I appreciate your support, but you don't got to support me if you don't want to support me. All right, we will see you next time. Have a good time all the time. Bye. Hey Ziggy, you would never go no contact with me, would you? No, because you like contact, because that means rubs and petties and maybe treats and stuff like that, right? Maybe we can go inside and get a treat and edit the video. All right.
We'll see you inside.